As I'm sure you're aware now, Spider-Man, the set, has released to a very mixed reception. People getting into the game through the cards love the set, and longtime Marvel fans love the set, but people who have played the game for a pretty long time, for the most part, seem to have a very heavy dislike for the cards in the set. And look, if you got into the game through Spider-Man, that's great. Welcome. I hope you enjoy your stay here. If you like Spider-Man as a set, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I have to be real here, the majority of players just don't like the set. I'm sorry. But don't just take my word for it, the set is bad. You can look at the prices themselves. If we compare prices of Spider-Man cards on average with previous Universe Beyond sets, we see that Spider-Man has 9 mythics worth $5 or more, and only 5 rares worth $2 or more. Assassin's Creed, a much smaller set, had only 4 mythics worth $5 or more, but 13 rares worth $2 or more. And Final Fantasy beats both those sets with 13 mythics worth $5 or more and 16 rares worth $2 or more. The evidence is there. When you compare Spider-Man's prices to other previous crossover sets, it becomes very clear that people just do not want these cards. The prices of Spider-Man boxes are plummeting because the value just is not there in this set. With all the evidence we have, it becomes very clear that people just do not want Spider-Man cards. But why? A lot of people said before the set even released that Spider-Man was going to be a bad set, because due to the setting, the cards wouldn't fit in Magic. Cards depicting real-life locations, an IP that has no magic in and of itself, or the IP is just too similar to our everyday life. It's a set depicting New York with pigeons and ferry boats and bagels and schmear. So it's no wonder that people feel like the set doesn't feel like Magic. But what does not fitting in Magic actually mean? We had the Fallout Commander decks, and Fallout has no magic in its IP at all. It is purely technology, and is quite literally simply just a wasteland version of modern day society. And yet, Morrow himself came out and claimed that the Fallout decks were the best-selling Commander decks of all time. Warhammer also did really well, but that's more of a science fantasy IP, which I'm sure many others would also claim is not Magic. Aether Drift was literally a in-universe set that many people claimed didn't feel like Magic because of its overemphasis on vehicles and racing and overall just very foreign concepts to Magic as a game. The same way many players also felt about Thunder Junction and Mild Inconveniences at Carlisle Manor, where many people had a sentiment that these sets were not Magic, but rather Magic wearing a trench coat of some kind. Let me make this clear. Literal in-universe sets that had no crossovers of any kind, minus Clue for Carlisle Manor, but I'm not really sure people seem to pay attention to that one, to be honest. People have felt like did not feel like Magic. Look, don't get me wrong. I didn't like those sets either. I have not spent a single dollar on Spider-Man. I did not spend a single dollar on Thunder Junction or Carlisle Manor either. I also did not really like those sets, but I'm just not entirely sure the reasoning is because of just the fact that it doesn't feel like Magic. You have heard it over and over and over again at this point, I'm sure, of people saying that Spider-Man doesn't feel like Magic, and for that reason alone, the set would fail. But I'm not sure we, as a player base, have an actual collective agreement on what that actually means. Because if Spider-Man's lack of magic in the IP was really all it took for the set to fail, then by extension, the Doctor Who decks should have been massive duds. And even those decks, deck releases that many players felt were kind of treading the line of being within Magic, sold decently well. If you look online for reception about the decks, you will see many players actually liking the decks and even complimenting them. So I think we need to take a closer look at what the actual issue with the set are. I made a video roughly 10 months ago claiming that Universe Beyond was unsustainable. And in that video, I listed the following reasons as to why I believed that was the case. The IP has to have a big enough audience. The IP has to have enough content to work with. The IP has to have no controversy within the IP. And the IP has to have no stipulations such as the IP having its own card game, or being too violent. The only real problem amongst these issues that I think Spider-Man suffered from was the IP not having enough content, but I think there's another issue here that I think I and a lot of other people really hadn't thought would be an issue, and that is the card designs. When comparing Spider-Man to other Universe Beyond sets, it becomes very clear that this set has very selective flavor. A bunch of the Spider-Man have a weird emphasis on +1/+1 counters, and I'm not really sure why. Is it because like the webs they shoot can be interpreted as like bolstering yourself? I don't think so. That doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Cards like Absolute Virtue in Final Fantasy had the text it does because in the game Absolute Virtue is from, it is this extremely hard to kill boss monster where even if the players actually found a viable strategy to beat it, the devs would actually nerf the strategy out of the game and make it so that it no longer worked against Absolute Virtue. Adelbert Steiner cares about equipment because look at him. He's a knight. And Final Fantasy as a game in general has a very big emphasis on managing your equipment and the items you have equipped on your party. Battle menu. Do I even need to explain this one? And if we look at Spider-Man's set, we can see that the flavor just does not match to the same degree Final Fantasy does. Anti-Venom. He does have the power to heal people, but from what I can find, there isn't any moment in the comics or in any media where Anti-Venom literally brings someone back from the dead. Carnage gets to unearth a creature when he enters. Why? Again, from what I can find, Carnage can't possess corpses or use them as weapons. Gwen Stacy is a Exile Matters card, but from what I can tell, there's nothing in her character that really allows her to reach into like different dimensions for part of her powers. The most I can find is that she possesses a web watch or dimensional travel watch obtained during the war against the Inheritors, which to be fair, the web watch does have an exile synergy with it. But that doesn't explain why Gwen has an exile synergy. Look, we already had a Bant web-slinging matter Spider-Man. Why could we not have had a Jeskai web-slinging Spider-Man that maybe has the web-slinging work on a different axis compared to the Bant Spider-Man? Maybe she could be a Warstorm Surge for web-slinging, where if you web-sling a creature in, it gets to deal damage equal to its power. That'd be unique, and for the times where the flavor does make sense, it just feels kind of like really low-hanging fruit. Dr. Octopus, Master Planner. On your end step, if you have fewer than 8 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference. Get it? Because Octopus and Octopi have 8 tentacles. Yeah, that's some peak flavor right there. Black Cat Cunning Thief. When Black Cat enters, look at the top 9 cards of target opponent's library. Get it? Because cats? And people say cats have 9 lives. Yeah, that's some cool flavor. Like, it's just the most, like, low-hanging fruit for a card design imaginable. I get it. The flavor does make sense, but it's not really, like, a impressive or eye-catching design. It's just, oh, I get it. Number. Because that person has animal associated with number on their character. Yeah, I understand that. So Spider-Man has some bad design cards. Cool. But how does that compare to other sets that players felt like weren't magic? Karlov Manor. I don't think it's insane to say that the cards in this set really weren't that evocative at all. People didn't like Disguise because it was just Morph Plus. Detective Kindred didn't really go anywhere. We got one white-blue Detective Lord, I'm pretty sure, and that was it, with Private Eye. And the set just felt very disconnected from previous Ravnica sets. There were clues as well, but I mean, clues were a success in other sets as well, so you can't really use that as a defense to the set when it's just an old mechanic they brought back for this set because it just happened to fit. And there was also Cloak, which only appeared on like, I think like maximum 6 cards in the entire set, so they literally made an entire new mechanic, which is Manifest Plus, and then only put it on like 6 cards. Why? Aether Drift was a set that had to mesh 3 planes together in a single set, which also had to have a very central core theme of vehicles, and I don't think it's safe to say that people did not like speed. Speed was a weird mechanic, contrary to the name, was actually extremely slow to get working in games. Not to mention loot. Ugh, I hate that thing. There was a random, like, dinosaur lord in the Aether Drift set too for some reason. Why? Okay, so it's clear that all these sets that players didn't like had pretty mediocre to bad designed cards. But what about the crossover sets that have no magic in their IP and yet the players loved? Fallout. People loved Radiation. The Mothman Precon was a home run. Everyone loved how Radiation played. Everyone loved the dynamic that Radiation created in their Commander games. One of the biggest commendations from the Fallout sets was Radiation because people loved the actually innovative and unique take on Mill, one of the famously known worst archetypes in all Commander. Doctor Who gave us time travel, which innovated on Suspend. Once again, a old mechanic that tends to not really get a lot of support, and yet somehow Doctor Who managed to find a way to make Suspend cards actually interesting with time travel, a new mechanic that actually felt like it did fit really well with other Suspend cards. Not to mention, a lot of the cards in these decks ran on time counters, so time travel just seems to be a natural fit. And time travel is a very common trope we see in Doctor Who. So the integration of time counter cards from old sets and a new mechanic, time travel, the designers actually managed to mesh together really well for the Doctor Who decks. So I think this makes it pretty clear that what makes a bad Universe Beyond set really isn't actually the theming or what the actual IP is. It's the card designs. If the card designs suck and aren't fun to play with, people aren't going to want the set. Final Fantasy was a home run because so many of these cards were fun to play with. And not to mention, a lot of the characters actually got really good, flavorful designs in our game, unlike Spider-Man, where Gwenom Remorseless makes you pay life to play cards from the top of your deck. Why? Look, I want to say it again just to be clear. If you are someone who has gotten into our game through Spider-Man, that's okay. Please don't feel ostracized from Magic because you got into the game through Spider-Man. We're happy to have you here. And I understand that it may be disheartening to hear that a lot of players don't like the set that got you into the game. And I am sorry that you have to see a lot of complaints online about what potentially will be your favorite set for years to come. But just know that all the complaints from players do come from a place of love, not because we want to stick it to you Spider-Man players who got into our game through Universe Beyond. Please don't think that. Our complaints do come from a place of love. But hey, who knows? We do get Marvel Heroes next year, and for all we know, the cards in that set will have much, much more interesting designs. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.